Among the wildflowers of British Columbia, the amazing depths of the valleys, the huge mountains, the open sky, here we are today. We are going to have a look at the Hummer H3. My name is Edward, and you're watching Ed's Garage. Hey folks, welcome back to Ed's Garage. Today, a very special review. This is a vehicle that I've now owned for just over, I think, a year and a half now. And you know what? It's been fantastic. I love it. But I want to basically share my experience with the Hummer H3. Some of the things that have bothered me about it and some of the things I love about it. So basically today I'm just going to do a feature review of the vehicle, a little bit of a drive review as well. So check it out. This is a 2007 Hummer H3. Now obviously this is not in its stock form. I have modified quite a few things, but I'm going to basically not talk about any of the modifications. This is all going to be about the truck in its factory form as much as I possibly can, because obviously a review on a vehicle that I've changed, you know, isn't really conducive to all those other people are looking at Hummer H3s or whatnot. So the reason I bought this truck is because I like unique off-road vehicles. And nowhere other than a Jeep Wrangler can you find a stock vehicle that's as capable as a Hummer H3. Now, some of you who probably hate Hummers are probably laughing at that statement, but I'm going to show you and explain to you why it's true. So let's go over the front to the back to the inside of the vehicle, and I'll show you what I love about this. All right, so ignoring the obvious changes here, the vehicle doesn't come with these headlights or this light bar or this winch or this bumper winch mount thing. I've modified a lot of it on the front here, but what it does come with is these massive D-ring hooks. Now these are huge. They're much bigger than anything that you'd see on most factory stock vehicles. So awesome tow hooks. They got one on both sides here. There's actually one on the back as well, which I'll show you. Now ordinarily you'd have a typical set of halogen headlights in the front and fog lights. That is standard with the vehicle. You got this cool beefy bumper, but it is made of plastic. So the previous owner actually cut off the little wings off the bumper here just to give it a little bit better approach angle. These have a fantastic approach angle, departure angle, breakover angle. All of it's really, really good. But just how good is it? Considering the base model Hummer could actually ford 34 inches of water, it had a standard ground clearance of 9.7 inches, an approach angle of 37.4, departure of 34.7, a breakover at 22.1 degrees. This vehicle could scale a 16-inch vertical wall, all with the 31-inch tall standard tires. Obviously, all of this increased with the optional 33-inch tires on the Adventure package. And it even only had a 37-foot turning circle, which is only a couple feet more than the Jeep Wrangler at the time. The overall width of the vehicle is only an inch wider than the Jeep Wrangler as well. The Adventure package included the 33-inch tires, off-road shocks, a rear locker or a rear and front lockers in later models, a 4-to-1 low-range gear ratio from a Borg-Warner electrically selectable transfer case, 410 axle ratio, better articulation, and more body armor. All the H3s came with an impressive four-wheel brake disc system with dual piston front calipers. The 3.7 in the 2007 later versions of the inline 5 actually produced 242 horsepower and 242 foot-pounds of torque. However, if you wanted to get more power and torque, you could get the optional Alpha model with 300 horsepower in the later models as well with the V8. Pretty impressive specifications. Under the hood of the Hummer H3, first off you pop it on the inside, then you put your hand through the grille, this wonderful bug covered grille, and you pop this little guy right underneath here, and then you lift. But when you do lift, it actually supports itself, which is kind of nice. Underneath the hood of the Hummer, now in 2006 it would have been a 3.5 liter 5-cylinder engine. That's right, it was a straight 5. This is part of GM's Vortec series. The 5-cylinder is the Vortec 3500. This is the Vortec 3700. It's a 3.7 liter. The 2006 had some issues with the valve seats on the head. So they redesigned it in 2007, made it a little bit bigger, gave it a little bit more power, and this is the 3.7 liter. So one of the most common modifications that, well, not that common, I guess, but a lot of people actually, what they'll do is they'll cut out this fake vent here and they'll put an actual real vent. It's not a bad idea on the Hummer H3 because the vehicle does like to run kind of hot. In weather like this, right now it's about 28 degrees Celsius. It gets up to about 100 degrees Celsius, the engine does, and it stays around there. The transmission hovers around anywhere between 85 to 95 degrees Celsius. So it runs a bit hot, and, you know, adding a little bit of extra ventilation, probably not a bad idea. Now, one of the cool things about the Hummer H3 was that even though it came with, at the time, it was 31-inch or 33-inch tires, factory, you can actually install 35-inch tires, which is exactly what we're looking at here. These are a BFG KM3 35-inch mud terrain tire. In the back, there's absolutely no clearance issues at all. In the front, all you need to do is crank the torsion bars up a little bit to level the truck. So you're not actually giving the truck a lift, you're just leveling it out, because from the factory, they actually point it down a little bit. I'm guessing for fuel economy, but just cranking up the front torsion bars a little bit allows you to put 35s in here with really no rubbing. A little tiny bit of rubbing depending on how wide the tire is, but nothing too substantial. The tail end here, now, the Hummer actually has a side opening door. It's not a lift hatch, it's a sideways gate. And it actually has a prop on it as well to keep it open on hills. So back here, as I was mentioning earlier, you've got this nice beefy D-ring, or D-shackle, or D-ring, sorry. It's definitely a D-ring, not a shackle. I think they pretty much all came with factory tow hitch. Can tow about 4,500 pounds max, which is the tow rating on it. It does that pretty handily, but if you are going to be towing with it, I highly recommend installing a transmission cooler, because one of the issues that this vehicle did have was that 4L60E transmission unfortunately just wasn't that good. You could get them in a manual transmission as well, but they're very, very rare. And in later models, you could actually get a V8. It's called the Alpha model, which honestly is the one to get if you can find one, but they're very expensive even today. All right, so looking at the rear door itself, underneath here would have been the jack and the tire iron and everything. I've actually converted it to a location for my air compressor. Now obviously the drawers didn't come with it, so storage space was quite good in this. It was completely washable. Everything was either plastic or some sort of rubberized plastic. The floor of the H3 is actually soft, which is kind of interesting. I don't know if you can see it right here. So all the way from here to the seat backs is all sort of a soft, cushy floor, which is kind of interesting, but it was all cleanable. You could wash it out, hose it out pretty easily. And you'll notice on the back of the seats, it's also a solid plastic and again, can be washed out easily. On the left side here, we can see we've got a Monsoon audio system. This is the subwoofer for it. Later years came with, I believe, a Bose system. Now, it depends on the trim level you're getting, of course. This is the luxury trim with the Adventure package, so it has the audio system, the Monsoon amplified audio system with the subwoofer. Definitely want to look at that as well if you're considering a purchase of a Hummer H3. On the right hand side, you have a little storage compartment here. Got to have the TP. And on the left hand side, where the subwoofer would be on lower trim levels, there's actually another storage compartment. There's also 4 tie downs, one on each corner of the floor. Mine are removed in order to make use of the area for the drawers. All right, so before I jump into the rear seat, I want to show you, it is a 60-40 split rear bench, but there's one thing you need to do. So when you put the seat down just like that, it's actually not going to go very far until you get your front seat out of the way. So let me just do that real quick. Now, of course, that's only a problem if you're 6'2" and have to have the seat back a little bit further. But there's another thing you need to do, because you'll notice it doesn't actually go down very flat. So first, you lift up on the bottom of the bench right here, and then you slide it forward just like that, and then you put the seat down. And it goes down pretty flat. Now, it's not a flat floor onto the back. You can see we've got the floor of the trunk right there and the seat back there. So it does raise up a bit, but if you're like me and you want to put a bed in the back, it actually works out quite well. I did actually, before I had the rooftop tent, I had a fold-out bed that would fold over this thing and basically make it nice to sleep in at night. So let's jump in and try it out. I'm on a bit of a hill here. Okay, there we go. So as you can see, my knees are up against the seat back, but if you just sit comfortably with your knees out, like most people would do, it's perfectly fine, perfectly acceptable. Now remember, I'm 6'2", but I can slide my feet under the seat, so it's actually not bad. I've got some seat back pockets here. Now these seat back pockets have been an issue. Basically, the little elastics that hold these clips on wear out over time. If you do purchase one of these, all you got to do is put a zip tie between the elastic band on this one and the elastic band on this one to just pull that elastic closer, and then they hold quite nicely. And I've actually got a video on that as well. You got two cup holders here, mask. So your cup holder. Now it is a cup holder. It's actually got a little flap there. And what you'll ordinarily find in the back of the seats is a screen, because this vehicle actually came with two DVD players, one in each headrest. Now, grab handles are plenty. You can see we've got one here, obviously the door, and then one on either position on the other side as well, of course. And as far as seat comfort, it's actually very comfortable. The seats in these are so nice. They're comfortable front and back. The front actually has a lot of manipulation. The back, you can recline them a little bit if you don't have a giant shelf behind your seat. So that's kind of nice. Up along the headliner, you can see we've got map lights for both of the front passengers, and then a center light comes on when the door is open, and then you've got another center light back here that lights up the cargo area and the back seat. Now these ones normally are going to be halogen as well, or just incandescent, but I've replaced them with LEDs. Okay, let's check out the front seat. Now, one of the most important things for me is front seat comfort. I have a bad back. I'm a little bit taller and my back always gets sore. So a comfortable front seat is important to me. And that's why when I was looking for an off-road vehicle, it had to have power seats. So check this out. In the Hummer H3, you get power seats. But here's all the different places that you can put them. So you obviously have 1, 2, 3, 4, that's tilt. 5, 6, that's height. 7, 8, lumbar support. So 8-way power adjustable seat, plus they're heated, and of course you have your backrest. So 8-way power, 2-way backrest, so that's 10 total, plus, check this out, this is what I love about this vehicle. 1, 2, 3, and back to 0. So adjustable headrest, obviously up and down and in and out, and of course the seat back and the lower back support. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-way adjustable seat. 14-way. It's been a long time since I've actually done a review on a vehicle with that much adjustability on the seat. And generally speaking, the passenger always gets kind of shafted with less adjustability. Not in the H3. In the luxury trim, the passenger seat is exactly the same, has all of the same manipulation. So if you have somebody who's a lot shorter, for instance, my wife is a bit shorter, she can actually raise the seat and be very, very comfortable in the vehicle. All right, let's check out some of the features inside the vehicle. So of course you have your typical power windows, power locks, power mirrors. And while we're looking at this, I will point out, this is not soft touch. This is as well. This is not. Nor is the dashboard. Okay, so this is hard. All of it's hard plastic. Now, a lot of people get, all up in arms about hard plastic interiors. Personally, I don't care. I don't think it's a big deal. I mean, sure, it's nicer to have soft plastics, but I mean, I'm not touching the dashboard. Steering wheel is tilt. It's not telescopic, just tilt. We do, of course, on the left-hand side here, you can see the controls for your headlights. You got auto headlights, you have fog lights, as I mentioned before. There's your dimmer switch there. This vehicle was equipped with OnStar, however, it is disabled at the moment. We've got an auto dimming rearview mirror with compass, and of course, a sunroof, but it's not just any sunroof, it's actually a huge panoramic sunroof. Check it out. Now, mine, you can see I've got a solar panel mounted above it. But ordinarily, there's a very large power sunroof here. It's quite nice. Now, as far as the sun visors go, they are lit up and they've got mirrors. You have your home link buttons right there, and you have the extension to block out the sun when it's coming from the side. Unfortunately, it's not quite long enough, so that's too bad. And like the seats, the sun visor on the passenger side has all of the same manipulation as the driver's side. Now this of course is the leather interior. It came in cloth or leather. Lower trims of course had cloth seats. I will say that the leather has held up very, very well actually. This particular vehicle has about 260,000 kilometers on it, and as you can see, the leather has actually held up really, really well. I've got a couple cracks here. You know, it's kind of worn down here a little bit, but it's not ripped, it's not torn, it's not scraped. It actually looks really, really good. The steering wheel itself didn't come with any buttons or anything. By the way, you can get these aftermarket. They're pretty cool. I just drilled a hole in the steering wheel and put them in there. Not all the way through, obviously. As for the center console, on the 2007 Hummer H3, you have two 12-volt power outlets. There's a third one in the back that I forgot to point out. You have your controls for your rear window wiper here. Obviously, it has AC. It's all manual climate, though. There's no automatic climate control on these vehicles. This is not the factory screen. The factory system was basically a 6-inch screen, quite a bit smaller. But here's where the off-roading tech comes into play. So it's full-time four-wheel drive. So it has a center differential that isn't locked by default. It's a full-time four-wheel drive, open differentials, front, rear, and center by default. But of course, it does have a locking locking center differential button, which is right here. And you've got your 4-low. You've got your rear locking differential. That was not standard. That could be, you wouldn't have that on the non-adventure models. But I will say this, the traction control system in this vehicle is spectacular. So even on an H3 without locking differentials, it's still very, very capable. The traction control is really good for 2007. It comes in very quickly and it's aggressive. It locks up that slipping wheel right away. So it's really, really good. So one other thing I forgot to bring up was the cross rail system on the Hummer. So right now I've got my rooftop tent mounted onto the cross rails. But what's really nice about these cross rails is actually they're completely adjustable. You can slide them up and down anywhere along the way, and they say Hummer on them, which is kind of cool. All right, so driving the Hummer H3. So on the road, this vehicle is a bit of a beast. It rolls a lot. It doesn't handle well in sharp corners. Especially when you don't have the tire pressure at the correct pressure. So when you come off the trail, don't forget to bump your tires back up to 35 psi. On the trail, on the other hand, it's spectacular. It's downright luxurious. Like I said before, the seats are incredibly comfortable. The suspension is actually really, really good. The approach departure angles are phenomenal. And this wonderfully low crawl ratio means that you can go down really, really steep hills without having to worry about using your brakes at all. One thing I will say though is the visibility out of this vehicle is atrocious. That is a nice way of putting it. It's really bad. The windows are very narrow. The A-pillars are huge. You know, forward visibility, especially when crawling over an embankment or a culvert or something, is not great. So I highly recommend anybody who's looking at these vehicles, get yourself a front camera so you can actually see what's over that hill, and a backup camera because, well, quite frankly, when you do turn around to look back, there's a lot of space between you and the rear door. Some of these models did come with backup cameras though. They kind of popped out of the mirror. But I think that was only in higher trims of newer years, like the 2009-10 era. They only made these from 2006 to 2010, so finding one that's newer, especially the Alpha model with the V8, is a real task. But yeah, this road is very, very bumpy. It's actually quite narrow, but the H3 can take it just fine. The fact that it's narrow is not really a big deal because the truck actually is a lot narrower than it looks on the outside. It looks like it's as wide as a Sherman tank, but in reality it's not really much wider than your typical like Jeep Wrangler, for instance. It is wider, don't get me wrong, but not that much. It's still very usable. It's not like a full-size truck, for instance. A full-size truck is going to have much more difficulty getting through tight terrain than the H3 would. The other thing I do wish that it had was power folding mirrors, because when you're going through these tight trails, it's always, convenient to be able to fold your mirrors in really quickly. These ones, they do fold. They're a manual fold, and quite frankly, they're really difficult to fold. So I usually just leave them out and hope for the best. However, I'm sure there are many H3 owners that have had their mirrors torn off because they've hit something on a narrow part of a trail. So yeah, that's definitely one thing that I kind of wish they had. So one thing I didn't really talk about while going over the features of the vehicle is the instrument cluster. It's pretty basic. There's not a whole lot of going on, but basically if you have a look down here, you can see we've got the RPM gauge on the left-hand side, the tachometer, speedometer on the right-hand side. You're going to notice a couple lights on right now. That's just because I'm driving around in low gear, but also the tire pressure light is on because I've got the tires at 20 psi. I wish they didn't have a tire pressure monitor because it's aggravating, especially considering when you're going off-road, you want to have the tires at low psi. You'll also notice if you own one of these that the temperature gauge does get up to nearly the 3/4 mark if it's hot enough outside, but that's actually perfectly fine. Anywhere between the 1/2 and the 3/4 mark is still within factory. They just put a really weird temp gauge on there. There is a future temperature gauge thing that you can get, or sensor that adjusts that, but quite frankly it's not a big deal. Just remember, if it gets up to the 3/4 mark, you're not in the danger zone just yet. You still have you're still within the safety of the temperature range. You can see me here trying to peer over the hood. But yeah, if you do get an H3, do yourself a favor and get an actual temperature gauge. You'll notice up here on the roof liner of my truck, I've got right here, I've got my transmission temperature and my coolant temperature. So 80 degrees and 93 degrees, it's downright cool for this truck right now. But most of this drive so far has been downhill, which is why it's very cool. All right, so looking back at the different differential modes, so you can see right now I've got it in this 4 high with the lock on it right now. It's because I'm off-roading and I want to have a little bit extra security. I've got it in 4 high lock. Now the reason I've done this mainly is because if I were to break a CV axle suddenly, it would be really nice to already be in locked 4 high, because otherwise I'm literally not going to go anywhere. In this setting here, just the regular 4 high unlocked, that's the center differential that isn't locked if it's in this position here. So basically what that means is if your front wheels have no traction but your rear wheels do, you're still not going to go anywhere. Well, you would because you've got traction control, but without traction control you wouldn't actually go anywhere. With this, it doesn't matter if only 1 or 2 wheels lose traction in the front, it's still able to send 50% of the power to the rear and you still move. So to switch between these two, pretty simple. You just do it at any time. As you can see, I can press that one. Now we're in 4 high unlocked. But if I want to put it in 4 low, which is also locked center differential, of course, I actually need to come to a stop, put it in neutral, then press that button, wait for the flashing to stop, and then it's in 4 low locked. At that time, you can also use the rear locker or the front locker if equipped. If you have the front locker as well, you're going to see it right here where the traction control button is, and the traction control button gets moved down to the bottom of the console. Mine does have a front locker, but only because the previous owner installed one after purchase, after market. Now driving on the highway, this is where the H3 really does shine, because it's not just an off-road vehicle, it's also a luxury SUV, or at least in 2007 standards, it was a luxury SUV. So handling is pretty decent. It's, like I said earlier, it is a little bit roly-poly, but of course on the highway you're not taking corners at crazy high speed. So we're doing 100 kilometers an hour right now. This is an old truck, so there are a few squeaks and rattles. Not too bad though, it's held up pretty well. But as you can hear, well, maybe you can't. I know it's kind of tough to hear it, but there's not a lot of road noise, not a lot of wind noise. There is definitely some, but keep in mind I do have a rooftop tent on the truck as well. So yeah, sitting in here at 100 kilometers an hour, very easy to have a conversation. It's not a big deal. And I think this is the place that the Hummer H3 really stood out in comparison to the Jeep Wrangler back in 2006, 7, whatever. Because while that vehicle was like driving a tank on the highway, the H3 is like driving a car. It's actually really, really smooth. It's comfortable. It's not terribly noisy. Yeah, and it actually drives really nicely. I mean, and that's really the difference that the independent front suspension makes. It's not as good off-road because it's not as beefy, and it's, you know, the potential to break a CV axle while doing some rock crawling, unfortunately, is there. So you don't get the same benefit of a solid front axle in that regard. However, on the road, it's awesome. The suspension is so much nicer. Also, the other thing to keep in mind, because this is an off-road vehicle, GM made it very clear that they wanted to have something that can handle well off-road, which means a tight turning radius. So driving around on public streets, putting it into parking spaces, that sort of thing, the turning circle on this thing is ridiculously tight. Really easy to maneuver in tight spaces. Alright, so back here at the Nahatlatch Fire Tower Lookout, this beautiful, beautiful place here in beautiful British Columbia. Check out this view, guys. So does the Hummer H3 really deserve all of the hate that it's been given? I mean, the H2 is a little bit big and bloaty, but it's still a decent vehicle. The H3 was really, really well designed for an off-road vehicle, comparatively speaking to everything else out there on the market. I mean, there wasn't really anything else out there like it on the market. I mean, in 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, could you get a Jeep Wrangler? Yeah, but could you get one with as much luxury as the Hummer H3? I don't think so. So really, there wasn't anything with the luxury and the ability of the H3. And that's what makes the H3 such a great vehicle. If you don't like the Hummer H2, if you don't like the Hummer H1, okay. But don't immediately rule out the H3 because of that fact. Guys, I want to thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this video, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe for future videos. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.